On this episode, we discuss running from our problems by running towards solutions. My guest is Shawn, whose journey to overcome his heroin addiction began with running. Shawn's childhood was almost identical to mine, blessed with loving family and friends, yet still facing the normal ups and downs of life. Shawn often says, we're all recovering from something, and for both of us, that was a struggle with pain. Shawn dealt with physical pain from 2 accidents, one that would reintroduce opiates into his life, along with emotional pain, the pressure of being a good son, friend, and person. We also talk about the lengths an addict will go to for a fix, including the extreme of injecting heroin into your Let's jump in. Shawn?
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
Good. This is my guest, Shawn. This is my guest, Shawn Livingston. Hey, what's up? So, Shawn, tell people who you are, what you do, and what they can know about you.
Oof, that's a lot.
There's a lot. Let's start with this right now, and then
right.
we'll get into what you did do. Let's do what you do right now.
Gotcha. My name's Shawn Livingston. I do a podcast called I Am Redemption. I also work with people in drug and alcohol recovery. I'm a personal trainer, so I use fitness as an avenue to try to introduce them into a healthy avenue to take all that energy they used to put into getting high and getting drunk and putting it into something healthy. And then a motivational speaker.
Awesome. How long you been sober now?
Coming up on 7 years.
Did the pandemic make it easier or harder to be sober?
I know for a lot of people it made it harder. I didn't experience that, but I think for a lot of people, losing that sense of like in-person camaraderie and meeting up with community and everything like that, I think that it hit a lot of people hard. Because
community is huge.
Yeah.
Like in recovery. Well, I mean, community should be huge in general.
Right.
But community is huge in recovery, right?
Right, for sure.
I never write questions for guests, but because I had a whole, like we were talking about before we started, I had a whole NFL films on you because you have a documentary called 100 Miles Redemption. Shout out on Amazon for free. You can watch it for free on Amazon, right? One, do you listen to music when you run?
No, never.
I couldn't do it. All right, but two, I don't know if this question is even going to be good or not. You're a big hip hop head, music. You love music, I'm assuming, right?
Absolutely.
Is the way you intake music now different than the way you intook music when you were getting high? Or is it the same?
No. I'd say pretty much the same in the car mostly.
No, I mean in the sense of
like the way it sinks in.
Yeah, the way you sink in, because you got to think if you're like getting real fucked up and stuff like that, like you are listening to the lyrics, but you're not listening to everything. And in a sober mind, especially if you're a big hip hop head, you like lyricists, then you can really hear the lyrics and feel the lyrics and have the thoughts. And I was just wondering if listening to music now is different than when you listen to music when you were getting high.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say what I hear in a song is very different now. I can listen to the same song probably when I was high and the same song now in sobriety. And what I pick out of the song or what catches me or speaks to me is very different than then. But I'd say all the way straight through, I've been a hip hop head since as old as I was to start listening to music I was in. And so I've always been somebody that really listens to lyrics and breaks it down to a geek standpoint to where I know who's throwing subliminal shots at who and what record label's beefing. This dude's from here. He came from over here. He signed with this label. That was my soap opera growing up. I was
your wrestling
Source magazine, you know what I mean? Everything wrestling. But all the information I could get, I was infatuated with it.
Yeah. I was at the gym the other day and because I have a daughter, I've been slowly trying to justify all the misogynistic music that I listen to.
Right.
right?
Right.
But what I realized is now, like, now that, I mean, I was never a big drinker and I definitely didn't abuse drugs, but like, now that I even don't drink, like when I'm listening to music, like my mind doesn't go to like a negative space of the lyrics that the person's saying if it's like vulgar or misogynistic. It's almost like my mind twisted and it's like, I don't say like this is how I motivate myself, but like this is like, that's that guy's life and how he motivates himself.
Yeah.
But I go, in my life, this is how I motivate myself. And like that song would be playing in the background kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just don't see music quite the way I did before.
Yeah.
Which I just thought, I don't know. I was wondering from your perspective, it was different.
It's so the way I look at music, I think I look at it from an artistic standpoint. And I think people get so hung up on the words that are being said rather than what they're trying to like create and like the word play in it. If a word rhymes, a word rhymes. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, like myself growing up, big Eminem fan growing up, you know what I mean? Like, I could appreciate the complexities of what he was putting together. It didn't matter to me that he was talking about like throwing his mom in a trunk or like whatever crazy shit. Like, I didn't take that serious, but what I really appreciated was the way he was able to structure that and the syllables and everything like that. So I didn't ever get hung up on what they were saying because I know enough about it where it's like, okay, these 3 words rhyme with these 3 words. That's why they went with that. Not necessarily thinking that's what this person believes in their heart. Just like a comedian that says a crazy joke or something like that. I don't necessarily always think that's how they think or believe. They just knew it would get a laugh.
Okay. Enough about that. All right. So sober 7 years, right? And you're married?
Yes, sir.
How long have you been married to your wife?
We've been married about a year. It'll be a year coming up in March. Been together coming up on 5 years.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
So,
Sorry, babe.
Yeah, so y'all been together for 4 or 5 years, married for about a year?
Yeah, we met like right as quarantine was about to start happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were like starting to move around a lot less and this and that. And I had dating can be a pitfall with people in sobriety and stuff like that. So I just kind of within the past 6 months had started putting myself back out there and dating and thinking more towards getting serious. And so when her and I met, it wasn't like love at first sight or anything like that. It was cool. We hung out for a couple weeks and I was very open that I was still on the apps, and I told her she was absolutely welcome to that, we weren't together or anything like that. And we had gotten in like a couple bickering matches, getting to know each other. And so I remember like there being at one point where I was like, hey, I think we might be better friends than like, a relationship or whatever like that. And so there was one point where she had spent the night over at my house. I think we had been talking like 2 weeks, and she works early. I get up early and go to the gym. And so she had already gotten up and left. And I woke up and went to go change clothes to go to the gym. And I went to throw my clothes in the dirty clothes basket. And I look and my clothes basket's gone. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like, she stole my shit. Like, that's where my mind went, was that she stole my clothes. Because you have to understand, like, I've been dating addicts up to this point.
Yeah, so anything could go, right?
Right. And so now my head exploded. I'm like, oh my God, she took my laundry. Like, she went to go do my laundry for me because I was living in an apartment. I still had to go to the laundromat and all that. And so she had taken my laundry. And so that right there was like one of the biggest things that had ever happened to me. And so funny enough, like the next day I'd called her and it was a Friday night and I said, hey, do you want to come over? And she goes, oh, sorry, my friend's over. We're watching a movie. He should be gone soon. And I was like, he? What do you mean he? And so I ghosted her. I didn't talk to her for like a week, almost 2 weeks probably. Come to find out I had nothing to worry about with that person. You know what I mean? It was legit a friend. And so I didn't talk to her for like 2 weeks. And so I started swiping again. And so my wife, and she'll say this, I'll say that, my wife is not prototypically like what I would have gone for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? I had a type and she's just not that type. And so I started swiping again, and I had met a girl on there that was a little bit more my type. Prototypically what I would go for. And so I go to meet this girl, and keep in mind quarantine's just starting and everything like that. So there's not a ton of people out. And so we were going to meet at a park and stay outside and all that. And so in comes pulling in this brand new white Maserati, and the park's right next to me. And I just remember, I'm like, holy shit, like Maserati. Wow. Like That's a different tax bracket than I'm in, but whatever. So I hop out of the truck, and this girl hops out of her car, and the first words out of her mouth, she was like, "God damn," she's like, "You're sexy." And I was like, "Thank you." And I was just like, all right, cool. Like, I know where I stand with her already. Like, this is perfect. This is easy. And so we had hung out and, had a decent time that day. And then she had said something where she wanted to take me somewhere the next day and to meet her at this address. And so I meet her at this address. Turns out we're at Lake Austin, and this girl takes me out on her boat. And so she takes me out on her boat, and there was just she's a very nice girl, but there was just a lot of flexing of money. And she was talking about her birthday was coming up, and she's going to this private island, and she wants me to go with her. I've only known her for a couple of days, and I just remember sitting on that boat thinking, like, all this money shit's cool, but it doesn't like truly mean anything to me. I have a girl back there that just did my laundry. What the fuck am I doing on this boat right now? And I could not get off the boat fast enough. And so we ended the date, and I told her, I didn't think it was going to work out and everything like that. She was cool about it. And so I went home that night, and I texted my now wife, and I said, "Hey, can I see you tomorrow, please? I know I've ghosted you. I haven't talked to you, but can I please see you?" And she was like, "Oh, sorry, I already have dinner." She played it perfectly. She was like, "Sorry, I already have dinner plans tomorrow." And I was like, "Come on, like, please, I'd really love to see you." And she goes, "All right, well, maybe I'll come over before or after." And I was like, "Oof." She comes over before. She's not gonna be going to dinner. Like, that much I know. And so she let me sweat it out the whole next 24 hours. And so the next day I wake up and I'm like, "Hey, am I going to see you? Am I going to see you? Am I going to see you?" And she texts me at the very last minute, and she was just like, "Fine, come over." And so I walked in, and I remember grabbing her by the face and kissing her on the lips. And I was like, "You're mine now." And then we've been together ever since.
Would the old Shawn have like the girl on the boat with the money? But I mean, that's what we're really talking about. Like when you were saying like prototypical, you could go only physical looks, but right. It's that whole thing of what really impresses you now as a person is a good human being, someone you could trust, someone you could laugh with, enjoy time with, grow old with.
Exactly.
I had this saying where it's like, if you're looking for a partner, you should be looking for someone that if you were drowning in a tub, that they would pull your head out, not push it under. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of people that would push your head under.
Yeah.
You want somebody to pull you up.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you said no one had any reservations about your past when they met you like this.
Just like dating. I was always very upfront. It's weird going back, when you get sober, going back out into the dating world, because it's a big pitfall for a lot of people because, you've been numbing your feelings and emotions for so long. And then you get sober, and as soon as you start feeling your feelings again, you want to feel love. You want to feel wanted and all that stuff. And so it's a big pitfall for a lot of people in early recovery. They've run out for a man or a woman like that, and it doesn't usually end well. But I waited probably a year and a half before I really started dating and pursuing relationship or anything like that. And so I just always, from the get-go, was just straightforward about, recovering addict. Got out of the military, was hooked on painkillers, developed into a deeper problem, got into some trouble. It was always good, though, because at that time when I started dating, I was mentoring at-risk youth. I was working with other addicts. And so it was always very easy for me to say, this was what my life was like, but this is what it's like now. And I use that to help people. And people always seem to give a pretty favorable reaction to that.
Why do you think people don't have reservations? Because let's just break it down.
Yeah.
If someone were to tell you all that, okay, let's just kind of switch it. We'll say there's two girls, and her girlfriend is like, "I just met this dude, but blah, 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 blah." Her girlfriend would probably go, I don't know if you should do that.
Right.
But the person that actually met you, you're saying in almost all those scenarios gave you grace. Mm-hmm. So why do you think they did that?
One, I definitely think because they knew what I was doing currently, that I was helping people. But in all honesty, I think too, and we spoke on it a little bit before when we first met, but I think everybody's recovering from something. Everybody has a past. People have trauma. That everybody has things in their life that they're ashamed of and stuff like that. And so I think it's refreshing to a lot of people when somebody's willing to be vulnerable and open up about their issues or the problems they had. And I think it makes other people kind of feel comfortable about the stuff that they've been through. And then if you look at, I forget what the the actual words are to the saying, but it's basically like if you put your problems on the table, if everybody puts their problems on the table, you'll take yours back. And so I think a lot of people hear prison, heroin addiction, kicked out of the military, all that, and then they look at theirs and they're like, oh, well, mine's not that bad.
I was thinking about when you said that, like everybody's recovering from something. Like when I was married before, and we'll just say coming out of that, and my divorce was a really low point for me. Nothing on the level of heroin, but we get the idea of trauma, right? And to get on the other side of that, for that to be my kind of clean and sober, you know, it keeps pushing me more towards like I really don't want to drink, and I really want to love, and I really want to feel my feelings, and so. You know, when you said everyone's recovering from something, like even I can relate on that level of like, because now I feel like I really want love.
Yeah.
And like I have a person that had my daughter that I really love.
Yeah.
And it's easy.
Right.
Okay. What were your relationships like with girlfriends before you were sober?
Not good. I mean,
look, they're hard.
Right.
So if you're fucked up all the time, it's going to make them even harder, I would think, right?
Yeah, for sure. I was very sick. You know, I don't think I think the women I dated at the time, you know, I think a lot of them would admit too that at that time they were sick. It's just two sick people getting together. It wasn't ever, it was toxic. It wasn't like abusive or anything like that, but it was just, it's very hard to be in a relationship when there's no trust, there's no honesty, because both of our number one priority in life is to get money or get drugs. You know, my number one priority isn't my girlfriend. Her number one priority isn't me. And so we're putting everything else first to get to what we need to get. And so it just does not make for a healthy relationship, obviously.
Does the relationship with your wife right now feel easy?
Yes. That's why we're married.
Yeah.
So all my...
Well, and to your point, like y'all met you said pre-pandemic, right?
Just as quarantine was happening.
And so now y'all got forced in together. And that could be total. I mean, that was disaster for a lot of people. Yeah. Right. But that could have been total. You don't really know each other. I don't know. But like, you know, how long did y'all know each other before this?
Nah, like just as quarantine was happening, just as quarantine was starting to, you know, just as they were starting to like recommend it and all that stuff was right around the time we started dating.
That feels serendipitous now.
Yeah, it's very crazy how it happened, because all my relationships were these roller coasters.
Well, it's like you said, no trust, right. All the stuff, right?
It's just constant roller coasters. You're, you know, 1 minute you're completely in love with each other, can't keep your hands off each other. The next minute you hate each other, you're screaming at each other. People are throwing things, like it gets like that, and it's just constant day in, day out of that. And then I met her, and everything was just so even keel. You know, there wasn't these crazy fights. There wasn't these crazy lows or anything like that. And I was just like, wow, this is what a healthy relationship looks like.
After you got sober, roughly how many relationships did you have before you met your wife?
I mean, dating off and on.
I mean, just like dating a couple people, not really working out kind of stuff?
Yeah. Nothing serious. You know, we'd talk for, you know, a couple weeks, couple months, and then whatever would happen. So there was just not that connection that I had with her. But we'll say, I don't know, 5, 6.
I guess I'm curious, how much of the success of your marriage is that you are a different person? Like even like coming out of being sober, having those relationships, I'm assuming that like staying sober there's work always involved, right? So like you were probably even a different person than you were in those other 5 or 6 relationships.
Yeah.
Right?
Definitely.
So like, is it easy to see how much you were fucking shit up, like taking responsibility for your part inside your relationships?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like now with this relationship with your wife, like now you can go like, oh, I know what I'm responsible for.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's responsible for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much better communication, which obviously was a huge key. You know what I mean? We're good communicators, so it doesn't ever really get to that like fight point. Don't get me wrong. We bicker like anybody else. But it's just healthy. been together long enough to know how each other operates. I'm somebody that, like, as soon as there's an issue or a problem, I want to, like, let's get to it. Let's talk about it. Let's solve it now. She needs time to, you know, be able to go process and stuff like that. And so we meet in the middle on things, and it works, man. I was literally just having this conversation with a client of mine before this, talking about healthy relationships and
Saying what?
all that. I told him a story. They were asking me about getting married and asking me about my wife and stuff like that. And basically the question was like, how did you know she was the one? And I was like, I was dating a girl before, a couple months before I had met her. And there was an instance where I think in my life, a lot of the times I would, you know, sacrifice picking somebody for looks as opposed to what type of person they were.
Well, I mean, we're young.
Right.
We're guys.
Right.
Girl, pretty.
Right.
I mean, like, yeah, look, where were the guys like when I was like 15 that were like, you know what? That girl is really smart. I didn't have any of those friends.
No, for sure.
I mean, I'm not trying to be a jerk, you know?
But I think I could be wrong, but, you know, with me being an addict through all my 20s and half of my 30s, you know, it took me to get to 35, 36, 37 before like my mind switched to a healthy place and like what to look for in a woman and stuff like that. And so before, you know, if she was good looking, cool, she's for me. And so there was a girl I was dating, and there was an instance where I'd let her stay at my house while I went out of town for a while. And when I came back, she was supposed to pick me up from the airport, and I landed, had been flying all day, had a crazy layover. And it was a long day. All I wanted to do was get home. And I flew in, and the girl was not there to pick me up, wasn't answering the phone. Come to find out, she was down drinking at ACL. And so I had to take a $120 Uber ride to get back to my apartment, and then sat in the parking lot for 2 hours waiting for my keys to get into my house. And so I remember her showing up, and I was upset, and I was just like, give me my keys. And she was not expecting that, I don't think. I think she thought I was like, oh, hey. But that's just honestly the type of person that she was. And so I was like, no, give me my keys. She was like, well, I can't come up. And I was like, no, give me my keys. And so I walked up, and I never didn't pursue anything with that girl, didn't talk to her again. But now fast forward to, I meet my wife, who's my girlfriend at the time. And I'll never forget, first time I went anywhere and flew back in, she was sitting outside of the airport waiting for me for an hour. She was that early. And when I came down the escalator, she was standing at the bottom of the steps crying because she was so happy that I was home. And I was just like, this is what I hope my relationship looks like, as opposed to the other one. And so it was just a million different things like that. And so I was talking about the client with basically, like, when it comes to trust, like, I know the reason I know that's the woman for me is because I know it doesn't matter. I could fly 100 times in the next 100 days, and that woman will be waiting for me every single time I'm there, happy as hell that I'm home with tears in her eyes. And so how do you not, you know what I mean? How do you not choose that one as like, that's the girl I want to spend the rest of my life with right there.
Okay. So on the topic of unconditional trust and how important that is, obviously your parents gave you unconditional trust and love. And I made the statement, I said, well, you know, when someone's giving you that, how could you break that? Mm-hmm. What kept you breaking their unconditional trust and love?
Through addiction?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that comes to mind, it's like, I mean, you're a parent, you know, I know your child's pretty young. I don't know if you have any older or anything like that.
No, it's just her. Yeah, just her.
But so me being me training people, or me being a coach or something like that, I can't tell you how many times a parent will come to me and sit there and say, like, you told them this one thing, I've been telling them that every day, and they don't listen to me, but they listen to you say it one time. And so that's very much how I was like. And so it's like that voice, that teacher, that parent, you hear that voice all the time. And then you've heard it so much, and you've had that unconditional love and everything since day one. So you don't know what it's like without it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're willing to gamble with it because you don't know what life's like without it. I think that's part of it. And then I think the pull for drugs or alcohol or addiction, it's just, there's nothing greater than that. You know, obviously once you get in recovery, you realize the power of a higher power and stuff like that. But at that time, there's no amount of unconditional love or anything that's going to get in the way of, you trying to get that drug or trying to complete that mission, if that makes sense.
Was there a point where like you would do something to break your parents' trust, and in your head you're like, I'm not going to get away with this. Like, I don't even know if this is going to work. Or were you like, it's always going to work? But then when you got away with it, was it just like more confidence that like, oh, now this is a tool I can use to get money for drugs? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There's never that much deep thought going into it. I'm not thinking about consequences or outcomes or anything like that. It's very simple. Like, I need drugs. I need money. This is how I'm getting money right now. And then that's that. And then as soon as you get the drugs and get high, it's the same thing again. And then again and again and again.
Okay, so while you're going through these cycles, were there ever moments where like you saw your mom or dad's face, and for that brief moment you were like snapped out of it and you realized how hard you were hurting them, and then you just kind of went like right back to it?
Yeah, there's a extreme level of guilt at all times. And then, you know, how do I say it? When you're in addiction and everything like that, when somebody is behaving in a way that their loved ones or people in their immediate vicinity that they wouldn't condone, you tend to stay away from that. Mm-hmm. So I cut communication off as much as I could with family, friends, anything like that, because I was ashamed of what I was doing. I didn't want them to see it. So immediately, as soon as I got hooked on OxyContin, I was out of Ohio. I was bouncing around to different states, getting as far away from them as I could. But then on the, once or twice a year when, my mom's wondering what the hell's wrong with me or whatever, she flies down and sees me. And you're under this illusion every time that like, all right, I'm going to be able to hold it together. I'm going to have enough drugs to get me through this, or I'm going to have enough of this to get me through. She'll never know. Because drug addiction, it's not, I'll speak for myself, but heroin addiction, there gets a point where it's no longer about getting high and it's about just not being sick.
Right.
And so I didn't my last 3 or 4 years using heroin, I never got high. You just couldn't get high. I just would be not sick. And so I would try to do that every time they would come visit or anything like that. And it would work for a day, maybe 2. And then eventually the wheels would come off in some way or another where they would figure it out. And then it was, extreme guilt and saying all the right things and actually believing them. Like, I want to stop. I'll get help. I'll do this. But then as soon as they're out of sight, it's immediately to.
When you were saying that out loud in your mind, were you like, I'm not going to do that?
Yeah, I believed everything. Oh, no. So no, I believed the words that were coming out of my mouth.
You did believe it in the moment. Yeah. Like when they would come down and they would kind of, I won't say bust you, but they would figure it out and you would say those words. You believed it in that moment.
Yeah, hands down.
And then they would step out the door and it'd just be like, nope.
Yeah, as soon as I didn't have that structure or anything like that around me. I mean, I would be lying if I said like, they know I have a problem and like, in my head, I still knew I was going to get high later. I still knew I was going to get high tomorrow. But when I'm sitting there saying the words like, I don't want to be like this, I don't want to do this anymore, I believed every word I was saying.
Yeah, like, I believe you right now saying it, right? Because I believe you probably wanted to get sober. You just didn't know how, right?
Right.
You have a tight relationship with your mom?
Yeah, for sure.
Would you say right now at this moment, do you think she's always loved you unconditionally?
Yeah.
Or what is that like for you to know that she still does through all the things that like, what is it like to feel that kind of love?
I mean, through addiction, it's guilt. That's what it feels like to feel love. Guilt because you feel like you don't deserve it. You're not doing right. You're disappointing them. I don't know about you, but just a son growing up, like all I ever wanted to do is make my mom proud, make my father proud, make my stepfather proud. And so when I know I'm not doing that, it always bothered me. But then, it in the back of your head, but when they show it, when things happen and they show it, it's mind boggling. I don't know if you wanted to talk about it or whatever, but the end of the film.
Yeah, go ahead.
The end of the film is the biggest surprise I ever had in my life. I didn't know they were paying attention. I didn't know they were watching. I didn't know anything like that. And so the fact that through everything that I had put them through, my family, my sister, my mom, everybody, the fact that they would still show up for me like that or do that was just mind blowing to me. And the fact that that moment in our lives is captured on a film forever is just the craziest shit in the world to me.
It's cool, huh?
It's
the coolest.
It is. It is. It feels even, it's been years and it feels crazy to even sit here and talk about it now or know that or say that, like how, there's imposter syndrome. It's like, how did I get lucky for that to happen? All I did was get my shit together and start running a little bit and good things started happening. Obviously there's a whole lot more to that, but essentially that's what I did. And the way people rallied around me, the level of messages that I received, the impact that it had or the impact of what I do has on people and stuff like that. It's just it's very bizarre, but it's like, I've squandered every opportunity I've ever had in my life. And finally, I'm at a point in my life where it was like, all right, this is what I am meant to do. And I will die before I ever squander this.
So I'm a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, I do not want my daughter to do drugs in the sense of be addicted and ruin her life.
Yeah.
I understand that probably she's going to experiment and have things, but was there anything that your parents could have done that would have changed the outcome of the choices you made?
Probably not.
Because I think as a parent, that's probably okay. Obviously one, we can't control anybody else, so there's nothing that they could have done to control you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess as a parent, I kind of think like, man, like I think I'm doing a pretty solid job right now, but if it goes wrong somewhere, was there something I could have done differently?
Right. See, again, such a loaded question, and it's tough because you're talking about people's lives, but people need to understand, my parents had when I became of age to, getting close to the age, when I was 18, 19 years old, they were, if you're going to drink, it's cool, do it at home. We'd rather you do it here than driving and stuff like that. And their intentions were well. And I think for some people that worked. For me, it didn't work. But one thing people need to realize is like, oh, I do that. So if they do have a problem, they'll come to me and they'll talk to me about it. Right. You have to understand, like, you're programmed as a child. Like, all I want to do is make you proud as a parent. Why would I ever come and tell you something that's going to disappoint you so severely? Right. And so I'm going to hide it for as long as I can. The only thing, and with me, I don't think it would work, but I think maybe with a girl that it might work. Like, if my parents would have gave me pushback on like who I was hanging out with and stuff like that, I wouldn't have listened. I would have just left. I would have ran away from home, stayed with a friend. Like that happened. 17 years old, I got my first tattoo. My mom kicked me out and I didn't go back. So I would have went the other way, but I think so much of it and such important is the people you choose to allow to be around you. What type of team are you going to be on? What type of people are you allowing in your circle? If I would have stuck with the sports crowd and done that, I think I would have had a better shot, maybe a better chance of not getting into that world, but I was a partier anyways. And if I have the gene, I have the gene. So it could have come out still. But I think if there was more focus maybe on the people that I was around with or actual accountability, having, where am I at? What am I doing? Who am I doing it with? Those are important things for, I think, a parent to know. And I think as long as you have a good relationship with your child, that they're being honest and with what they're doing and where they're going and stuff like that, I think that's the best recipe.
What I'm also hearing you say, though, is that, like, no matter probably how much your parents did that, who you are and what you were going to do, you were going to kind of deny that anyway.
Probably, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because ultimately,
I don't know that there's much more my parents could have done. But for you, that's what I think. That would be where I would nudge you to emphasize for your daughter's sake.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that, like, your parents, I'm assuming, always did their best job. I'm always doing my best job. That's not always going to produce the results that we want to see. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, you can't control another individual. So, like, they could have put all the rules in place and you still would have broken them if that's what you chose to do.
Right.
But, I guess I want to bring light to the fact that, like, you can't control somebody else, but are you doing everything that you need to do as a parent to say, I did everything I needed to do? I've, a safe space to talk, where are you at? What are you doing? Keep up with this, well, all those. Am I doing everything?
Right.
You know what I mean? And not that your parents probably didn't even try that, but like the fact that they at least tried means that they cared and they wanted the best for you, even though you denied them.
Right.
Which is really not their fault.
Right. I think another big thing that I'm just now thinking of is the more responsibility you take on as a child, as a young person, I think the better. Because a lot of the people that I work with now are young kids that come from money. Mom and dad never they'll never even dip their toe in the shallow end, let alone ever be at rock bottom. You know what I mean? Like, first time they get in trouble, they don't even see a jail cell. They're bonded out, and they don't. So if you don't ever have any consequences and you come from money, they're not making you get a job. They're not making you do this. Like, that is a breeding ground for things like that to happen. Now, if I'm 16, 17 years old and it's like, oh, cool, you want a car? Good. Go get a job. Oh, you need gas for the car? You need insurance? Cool. You better work. Like, if those things are happening, oh, you want to continue to stay at the house? You know what I mean? All right, cool. You're going to pay this much rent. You need food. You're going to have this much. I think if stuff like that would have been, because like you need to do that stuff to live. So obviously now I have to go out and work. I have to have these responsibilities. I think that would have probably, I started working when I was 14, but I think for a lot of these young people now, I think that's something that I don't mean to sound like the bitter old guy, but something that maybe this generation lacks as opposed to generations before it.
Yeah, every generation has it much better than the generation previous. Right. So you have more resources, more things than any ever before, and we're doing less.
Yeah.
Made no sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You said something that made me think of, like, it's the idea of idle hands. Idle hands is the devil's playground? Right. Is that how it goes?
Yeah.
But, like, if you don't have a job or any responsibilities, you're just sitting around twiddling your thumbs, being on social media, right? So, like, that's where bad shit's gonna fucking happen,
right?
I've never thought of it like that, though. That the responsibilities you give a child at a young age teach not idle hands, what to do with your hands instead of doing something,
Right. And imagine, I put myself. Let's say I lived in a world where, like, all right, all you got to do is work just to pay for your own things. We're going to take care of your food. We're going to take care of your cell phone, your car payment. Like, I'm going to pay all your bills for you. You just make your own money to live, right? So now I don't have any responsibility. Now I'm just going out to basically make money to go party. Like, what else do young kids do?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like 18, 19, all cool. We got homecoming coming up. We got prom. Like, we all know where our mind was and what we were doing then. And so if you don't have those responsibilities, or you don't have that time, like, hey man, if I buy this case of beer, I'm not gonna be able to afford my cell phone bill. Like, they don't have that. So why would they think otherwise?
Do you ever think about that if you hadn't got addicted to drugs and abused drugs, that you wouldn't be in this spot right now that you're in?
Yeah. I tell people all the time.
Is it weird though? Because, like, you think about it, it's like if you didn't do heroin, you wouldn't be here.
Right. Yeah.
It's just strange, right?
It is. And that's a big part of my message with people and the clients I work with and everything. And a big part of my message on the podcast are for everybody. We talk about everybody's recovering from something. Right. And so getting people to understand that you have a different life experience than I do. And so there's people, if you're somebody that, let's say you grew up and you had trauma as a child, molested or sexual trauma, whatever it is, like, I didn't have that. You are able to walk into a room and touch people's lives that I never could. And that's, like, super powerful. And so trying to build people up and get them to understand that, how empowering that feeling is. And so I tell people all the time, the things that I'm most ashamed of in life are now the things I'm most proud of to stand in front of hundreds of people and say. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that I've had to go through every single thing that I did to be who I am today. And I wouldn't change that for anybody. Or anything, I should say.
What do you think your life would have been like if you didn't do heroin? Like, okay, let me back up. Would you say this is your purpose? What you're doing right now?
Yes.
Okay. So do you think you would have found your purpose if you hadn't gone through the whole heroin addiction part? Maybe, but definitely not to the level or degree that I have now.
I don't think I would be able to reach the people that I do or talk about what I talk to had I not done all that stuff. It's very different. Somebody, let's say you're an alcoholic. You could sit down in front of a doctor and a doctor could try to give you some explanation of why you're an alcoholic. You could sit down across from an alcoholic and he's going to tell you why you're an alcoholic. For me, that alcoholic speaks my language. What he's saying is true. What the doctor's saying is not necessarily true. So the fact that I have that lived experience of what I did, I think makes me uniquely qualified to work with the people that I do. And I don't think I would have been qualified to the level I am now if I hadn't.
Well, to your point, you speak a language that I don't speak.
Right.
Because I've never been an addict.
Right.
I've never thought of that's wild. Just like, and you could even break it down to like the actual words. You know what I mean? Okay,
Right.
So really quickly, just because, what are street names for heroin?
Smack. They're changed now. There's like fentanyls, Fetty, dope, brown, dog food.
Dog food?
Dog food.
Oh man, I've never heard that before.
Up north, it's dog food. So like down south, they have tar. Up north, they have China White. So it all depends on what you.
But just like in
Dallas, it's called cheese.
Really?
In Waco, it's called cheese.
Now you just spoke a whole language that I don't know.
Right.
And so when you go to reach people, you can reach people I can't reach.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? That's wild.
For sure.
Yeah. You want to take a little break? Do you get crazy shit in your comments?
I've had not super crazy, but there's some just wild.
I'm not at that level yet. I figure when I get to the level where people are like being mean in my comments, like that's when I'm really hitting it. You know what I mean? That's where like when your haters are cheering you on too.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't get any greater than that, does it?
Comment's a comment. You want to put some hate in there or whatever like that, I'll take the comment. But since starting the podcast, I've had people over the years chime in about some addiction stuff, and I just know they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about, so I don't really engage in it.
Like in giving advice?
No, like if you didn't choose to do drugs, then our tax dollars wouldn't have did this.
Oh, okay.
And so you're like, yeah, I chose to be a heroin addict. Like it was, you know what I mean? I consciously did this. Some people got the gene, some people don't. So I've gotten some stuff like that, but then now it's starting to get stuff I say on the podcast. And so like, bro, I'm from up north. Like I talk shit. Like that's my love language. If I talk shit to you, I love you. You know what I'm saying? Like you're one of my people. I only talk shit to the ones I love. If I don't talk shit to you, it means we just don't have the rapport, right? Mm-hmm. And I expect it back. I want it back. And so, and it's never to hurt people or anything like that, but it's always to try to get people to laugh. You know what I mean? I'm not a comedian or anything, but I enjoy trying to make people laugh. There's nothing like when you crack a joke and it hits in the whole room and the room explodes. Like it's a good feeling, man. Yeah. I made people smile. And so there was something I said with one of the guests where they're a content creator. They're also a very beautiful girl. And so when I was introducing her, I said content creator extraordinaire. And then, I said something and I was like, OnlyFans, right? Well, she's from New York. She talks shit. So she took that and was like, if these bills keep stacking up, like who knows? And like, so she knocked it out of the park and was right with it. But then she has a very big following. So there was a lot of her fans started chiming in on what I said, not understanding like she's a very good friend of mine. Like this is our normal dialogue.
Right.
And so they're acting like I'm going after Taylor Swift or somebody like that, like coming at me. Like, how could I say that about her or anything like that? Like, I'm good friends with her husband. You know what I mean? He's sitting right here in the same room. Obviously, I'm not going to say some wild, crazy, disrespectful shit. But so I've gotten some stuff like that, but nothing super crazy yet.
Now that I think about it, I've only had like really one. Well, I have had two instances. These are so stupid. Like they don't even compare to like what you're telling me right now. The first one was the guy wrote, "Learn how to speak English." And I was like, I get it because my accent's heavy and I talk weird and I jumble words together. But this just, I don't give a fuck. This is the way I talk. So I was like, whatever. But then the next time I got like just railed was one of my friends on Facebook had wrote this thing about doing the right thing or something. And I just wrote something to the effect of sometimes doing the right thing is doing nothing and just being present for that person. Or, to just be there.
Right.
And some old dude came rolling in there and he like tagged my name. You know how on Facebook you can tag your name, and he goes, because my name on my Facebook is Scott Thomas. Scott Thomas Gassner. That just sounds like laziness and complacency. And I was like, wow. And then, like after I got over my ego being butthurt about whatever, I was like, literally, this dude he knows zero about me.
Right.
So how could he even make that judgment?
Right.
You know what I mean? So what value is that opinion worth to me?
Right.
You know what I mean? If he knew me and said that, maybe we would have a conversation. But like he knows my Facebook.
Right.
And that ain't shit.
Yeah.
So I responded with a thumbs up on his comment, which can seem passive aggressive. Ding. Maybe it is. But then I put a link to a book that I thought he should read. And that was it.
That was it?
Mm-hmm. And he never responded.
Oh, really?
So I'm going to assume he didn't read the book.
Maybe you hear from him 10 years from now. He's like, bro, I read that book. It's changed my life.
Well, that would be fantastic.
Dope, yeah.
Because then he would understand the point that I was trying to make, which is that like sometimes the right decision, like it's in the sense of like sometimes with a friend, it's not what you tell them they should do or da-da-da. It's just you sitting there listening so they can process to figure out what they want to do.
Yep. Yeah.
And your job is to listen.
Right.
That's it. That's your only. It's the easiest fucking job, actually. You literally don't have to give your opinion. You literally don't have to tell people what to do. You just listen. You just be a sounding board so they can hear, their ears can hear the words out loud and process. It'd be like if you were telling them exactly what's inside their brain, except they're hearing it because they're saying it out loud,
Right. I know there's been times early on when I was starting to get involved with social media and stuff like that. And there were times where I started typing out like a comment on YouTube or something like that was going to be negative. And I just remember stopping myself and I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, is this what I want to do, is put negativity out into the world? And so as I've now started to get some of these comments and stuff like that, my immediate reaction is to want to talk shit back and crack a joke or something like that to try to get the people in the comment section to laugh. But it was like, all right, my goal with doing all of this is to try to help people and put positivity out in the world. So I'm going to do my best to always put a positive spin on it. And so I remember one of the comments I got was something about how big my nose was. And I was like, well, at least I know I'll always arrive first when I show up places. Like, bro, there's nothing you're going to say about me or to me that I haven't said way worse to myself. You know what I mean? Like,
well, and especially you with everything you've gone through. What's the worst thought you've ever had about yourself?
The worst thought I ever had about myself.
Like where you thought to yourself, you're just like,
I stole my mother's engagement ring, sold it for $100, and let my little sister take the blame.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Sold it for $100, and the ring is like
thousands, probably.
It's
at least 1,000. It's 900.
It's a tremendous.
Or in an heirloom, right?
No, it wasn't an heirloom, but my stepdad did good when he bought my mom the ring. We'll say.
Hey, look, it wasn't $100.
Right. No, definitely not. And so then I remember leaving to go back to, I don't know where I was living at the time, and then weeks later, I'm trying to think how it happened, because she had taken like the main stone out of the ring. And so it was just like
little diamonds.
Yeah, like baguettes or whatever they are all around it and stuff like that. And it still had like the two other ones that are next to it. So it was still
valuable,
very valuable ring and all that stuff. And then I remember my mom telling me about it, and she was like, yeah, I don't know if your sister or her friend just grabbed it and was playing with it and just didn't put it back. I'm like, yeah, that's crazy. Can't believe that happened. But I remember sitting there thinking about that as being like one of the things that really got to me. It was like, damn, like how big of a piece of shit was I?
Was that not in the moment? Now that retrospectively,
yes.
Like in the moment you said you didn't feel like that, like you because it was all about just getting high.
It was all about getting high, but I definitely knew that
you knew you were fucking up.
Yeah, now I'm stealing from my parents. You know what I mean? That stealing was one thing I never got down with. That's for a lot of people, that's their main source of income when they're in addiction. I could never do it. I didn't want to shoplift. I didn't want to steal from other people. Why that day, I was stranded in Ohio at the time, dope sick, and I didn't have any other option. Why that was the most valuable thing I could find, the quickest. There's no excuse, but it was just, stealing wasn't a practice that I always got down with. So when I did that, it really hit me. And then the fact of what I took, or now my little sister's involved and everything like that, that one hit hard.
In this real fucked up way, to me, it says a lot about your character as a person that you chose. I mean, it sounds weird to go, hey, well, he was doing drugs, but he chose not to steal. But like, for me personally, that would be a line that like I wouldn't want to cross either.
Yeah.
Like, this is my problem. I got to get the money. I'm not stealing from somebody else for my problem.
Right.
You know? So I don't know. That's just interesting.
Yeah. I was always able to, even in my worst in addiction, I still had the heart of a good person. You know what I mean? Like even in my deepest addiction, I would still be walking out of the gas station and hold the door for an old woman. You know what I mean? Like I still was courteous, still respectful and all that. I just had this illness, you know what I mean? This one thing that I just couldn't kick.
Okay. So when this is kind of a layered question. When you walk in, like when you would walk into a room, you could find the other addict. Like, you know what I mean? Like there was always that law of attraction, kind of, right? When you walked into the room and you could find that addict, was there a feeling of, look, at your core, you're a good person, but you meet this person, they're an addict like you, but you can feel at the core they are not a good person.
Yeah, but see, there were degrees of addicts I was willing to hang out with and ones that I weren't, if that makes sense. And so yes, we're all addicts, but just like all the people that aren't addicts, just because you're not an addict doesn't mean you guys are going to hang out or mesh. So you can still find your like-minded people. And so I'd like to think that I hung out with some of the more, I don't even know what the word would be, but
I keep coming back to respectable.
I mean,
but I mean,
if there's such thing as a respectable drug addict, yeah.
Well, like, we okay. You live and die on honesty, right?
Now, yeah.
Yeah. In the sense of like, you were hanging out with honest drug addicts, people that weren't willing to steal, that weren't willing to steal from their friends, maybe, like.
Yeah, and that's not all the time, but I'd say like my main core group of that's wrong. That's a lie. I guess maybe more it was just though they weren't going to do things like that. Why they knew I didn't get down like that, so they didn't get down like that while I was around. If that makes sense.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Even when you were an addict, were you kind of a leader?
I mean, I say all the time I thought I was a leader, but all I know is every time I hung around people that did dope, I did dope. So I don't know what kind of leader I was. I didn't.
But what you said a while ago, you said like, you know, the people that hung around me know I didn't get down like that.
Yeah.
So they didn't get down like that. That sounds like a leader.
Probably.
Right? So even inside your addiction, you were still a leader.
Of sorts.
It was always inside you, I guess. When you played sports, were you a leader?
See, I don't think I was back then because when younger, I wasn't coachable when I was young. I was very talented, but I wasn't coachable. And so I had an attitude and everything like that. And I got by on just like talent. And so like I was good at basketball. But I didn't understand the difference between being good at basketball and then somebody who's works their ass off day in, day out, till fingertips bleeding because they're shooting so many free throws and stuff like that. I didn't understand those two things. So in sports, I don't know that I might have thought I was a leader, but I don't think I was a leader. I don't think being a leader actually was something, I think it's something I grew into with age probably. I was probably destined to become one a lot earlier in life, but my actions and behaviors impeded that for a long time.
Do you think, what about this? Do you think that if you would have been more coachable at a younger age, that you could have been started being a leader way before this?
Definitely.
So like, again, it was always there.
Yes.
Just didn't want to be coached, ignored it, ran away from it in whatever way. Why do you think in the early part of your life you ran away from that leadership?
Responsibility.
For others?
For me, if I'm going to be a leader, that's a lot of responsibility you're taking on. That wasn't a responsibility I think I was willing to take at that time.
Did you take on that responsibility with your sister, though?
Yeah, naturally as a...
Big brother?
I mean, you say yes. Like, I'd say yes. Like, I would never let any harm come to her. You know what I mean? I would never put her in harm's way or do anything like that. But I mean, I wouldn't call myself a leader around them back then. There was nothing that they could really look to in my addiction and as something to look up to or anything like that. There was so when I went to prison, I read the book Purpose Driven Life. Mm-hmm. And I really thought on that concept of like, what is the purpose of my life? And for a long time, I would struggle with belief of, did I believe in God? Did I believe in Jesus? Did I believe the Bible? Did I believe this? Did I believe that? And so I came to terms with in prison was like, all right, I believe in God, whatever that is. I don't know that my simple mind's able to understand something as complex as God or anything like that, but I do believe there's something out there greater than myself looking out for me. So if I believe that, and I truly think what's God's purpose for me, if I sit here and think that my purpose is just life is supposed to be sunshine and rainbows, everything's supposed to be good all the time, like that's not realistic. That's not everybody has a good, awesome, positive purpose on this life, in my opinion. So I thought about my brothers and my sisters when I went to prison, and I was like, all right, so they watched me ascend pretty high as a young adult. I was good at sports, went to the military at a young age. You know, there was a lot to look up to as an older brother there. Then they watched this epic fall, crash, burn, kicked out of the military, heroin addiction, prison, all that stuff. And so I remember sitting in prison thinking, it was like, all right, if I truly believe in God and I truly believe he has a purpose for me, what if that purpose is for me to be a learning lesson for my brothers and sisters? What if they were supposed to see me ascend high and see me crash and burn? And what if that was my whole purpose of being on this earth? Was so maybe, hopefully they see my mistakes and they don't follow down the same path. And like, I became okay with that. I was like, all right, if I die today and they're good because of this, because of what they saw happen to me, and so now it's a warning to them, then it was all worth it and I would do it over again. So back to your question, as far as a leader, maybe in that sense of like being okay with that, yeah, but there wasn't a whole lot of behavior or, you know, words that I could give them that were much of any type of guidance as far as a leader was back then.
If, in this weird way, again, we're talking about like this path that you can't imagine any other path. So it's like, it was always there for you to be a leader. You possibly could have had an easier path if you'd always been kind of primed to be a leader, but it's almost like you had to learn how to be a leader through this path that made you a leader, which is just like wild. Yeah. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I feel so blessed that my leadership lesson was just like a short marriage, or like, you know, my growing up, and that, you know, I didn't have to experience the trauma that, you know, as far as like drug use that you did, you know?
Right.
This final segment is brought to you by HeyJustBe.com. I believe that achieving balance in the mental, physical, and metaphysical aspects of your purpose through learning, serving, and creating can transform your life into one you truly enjoy living. Want to learn more? Visit www.heyjustbe.com.
Nice mug. And no, I'm just kidding. So,
product placement.
Yeah, like product placement. So, what I usually ask people is, what do you do to just be your best self so that you can be good for everyone else around you? So obviously for you, it's a little bit different than a lot of people probably have to have or had deal with. So if you could kind of speak to what you do now, but then speak to like the things that you did whenever you were trying to recover that got you to here. So if maybe someone's struggling the same way, they would have an idea of where to start.
Right. If I'm understanding your question correctly, what I do now to just be is the gym.
Yeah, working out.
Yeah, that's my medicine. That is what fills my cup so I can fill other people's cups. It's just the best medicine a doctor had never prescribed for me, mentally, physically, spiritually, everything. That is what I do, and that's what I do to fill my cup. I think, you know, going back to early sobriety and trying to help people, what applies to the gym, you know, applies back then, and it's passion. I was a person that had a very, very, you know, I had the absence of any passion or motivation in my life. And so it took me getting outside of my comfort zone and discovering something that would become a passion. And so that happened to be running. I was in treatment. I was I had some sobriety time up under my belt. I looked in the mirror and I felt like shit. I looked like shit. I was just not happy with who I was. And so it didn't matter how much sobriety time I had. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to stay sober. And so, I was never a runner growing up. Wasn't something I ever got into. If I was a basketball player, I was a football player, I was a baseball player. If I'm running out with one of those 3 balls in my hands, I'm in trouble for something. It's some type of punishment. And so, started showing up to this running group and started doing that, and running, just exercise in general, healthy living, just completely transformed my life, my recovery, my mental health, my experience in treatment. It transformed everything. And so finding something that finally lit a fire up under my ass, it made me excited to get up out of bed every morning, made me excited to be alive, made me actually excited to be sober, because we as addicts and alcoholics and, just anybody who has these problems in general, for what I found for me was I would trap myself in this recovery bubble. And so you go to treatment, or you start getting sober. Everybody's first thing is the 12-step meeting. You go to, one of the A's and try to find your people and do all that. And so what nobody ever talks about in those rooms, though, is this is a foundation for you. It's not your life. And so I would trap myself in this recovery bubble where I would go and everything I did, everybody I talked to, every event I went to, everything was recovery, recovery, recovery. That didn't make me excited to be alive. It got me sober, but it didn't make me happy to be sober. I sat down in my first AA meeting and looked around and I was like, this is it. I got to do this shit forever. Now, it wasn't hopeful to me. I'm not saying the program's not hopeful. My outlook on the program wasn't hopeful. And so finally, when I discovered running, I didn't know running or physical fitness or anything could ever even impact my recovery or any of that stuff. But once I added that in, it put all the pieces of the puzzle together for me, and would end up becoming in recovery what people would start to know me for. And what would make people gravitate towards me is because they saw me doing this stuff and they wanted a piece of that. And so people wanted to start running, and then people start running and they're starting to have the same health benefits that I was having. And then you start seeing like, oh, wait, this is helping people. Like, how far can I take this? What else can I do with it?
It totally makes sense now that you don't listen to music when you run.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But tell me you're not one of these crazy people. You listen to music when you lift, right?
Never.
Oh my God. How do you do that?
Never once.
Like, I mean, music is my savior when I lift. It is what it's like. It's my own personal movie.
Best believe I'm bumping music all the way to the gym. But when I get there, it's like time to so here's the difference between running and the gym for me, okay. Right? Running, I fell in love with the outcome. I loved winning races. I loved being able to run distances people weren't willing to race, being faster than people. I loved the outcome. I didn't necessarily love the process. When you have to run 90, 100 miles in a week, midsummer in Austin, it's not fun. The gym, I don't have an end goal. I don't want to I don't want to get on a bodybuilding stage. I don't want to compete in a strength competition. I love the process. And so I want to be involved in that process as much as I can in my head, trying to connect with a muscle, trying to take it through its full ranges of motion and stuff like that. And so I just really enjoy being with my thoughts and stuff like that at the time. And then you start seeing my lesson early was people running. You watch people start to run and they always want to have their earbuds. Well, what happens when you're running a marathon and your earbuds just went dead at mile 13? Now you have to try to run 13 miles and you don't have that crutch of having that music in your ear. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so I've watched people fall apart and have to quit races because they didn't have that. And they didn't even know what was happening. They didn't even know why they were falling apart. But if you don't, I've become very comfortable with being uncomfortable. And if you can live in that uncomfortability, you can take it a whole lot farther than somebody who's afraid to feel that, see that, think that, or, you know what I mean, try to understand it, if that makes sense.
I'm a lot better than I used to be. If I would go to the gym and forget my headphones or stuff, like there were times where I was like, I'm just going to go home.
Right.
You know, but in what you're talking about, I was like, well, this is your lesson for the day of learning how to be with yourself while you lift.
Yeah.
Or lifting in a place where people kind of know me and that people are going to notice I don't have my earbuds in, so they're going to come talk to me. That
right.
This is the lesson I learned. Not the lesson I learned, but this is the process of today.
Right.
It's so interesting that you said you fell in the process of you fell in love with the process of working out. Mm-hmm. Like, do you think that, I mean, like have you fallen in love with the process of just your life in general?
Yes.
instead of like the outcome. Like, you know what I mean? Like there is an outcome. You're always directing towards an outcome, but the process is where all the magic happens.
Exactly.
And it's fun, right?
Yeah. Even so, it's with me doing the podcast now, there's a lot of people that are, bro, it's going to blow up, dude. You're going to be famous. You're going to do that. And I don't like, that's not my goal. I don't give a shit about any of that. If the podcast grows and helps more people, that's my goal. That's why I want to go to the podcast. It's not to be, I don't give a shit about being famous. Take a look at my social media. You don't ever see me like doing all this stuff. I'm being pushed to do it, which I don't like. You know what I mean? It's getting me out of my comfort zone, but that aspect never, it's funny because in addiction, I wanted all that so bad. I wanted to be popular. I wanted to be famous. I want to be this, you know, I have this huge ego and stuff like that. And now once you take the drugs and alcohol away, and now you look at me now, I've gotten some of that over here now, but it's not ever been my goal. So it's like the harder you try to get that stuff, it doesn't come. You come over here, you start putting good energy out into the world and stuff like that starts to happen, whether you like it or not.
Could it be that when you're shooting after all that stuff, you are being whatever you need to be or whatever you think people want you to be to get that? And then when you become yourself, you attract it to all the things that you want to achieve and get.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty spot on.
And all that, the other thing I want to just kind of take note is that a lot of that stuff feeds your ego. And when you lose your ego, right, then that stuff doesn't matter as much anymore.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I'm sure that part of the process of you getting sober was losing your ego, I'm assuming,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Big time.
You do anything, you don't like to read books, huh? I think I sent you a book. I'm sure he's like, I'm not going to listen to this stupid book.
No, it makes, when you did that, it made me feel guilty.
Really?
Because I know, like,
Oh, because you don't read books?
yeah, because
don't worry about it.
No, because then I'm like, fuck, man, I need to start reading more, like, shit.
Oh my God. So
It's a me thing. It had nothing to do with you.
No. But I always worry about that with people. You know what I mean? But like, look, I send shit out to people all the fucking time. I'm always sending music out.
Bro, I send music to people. They probably don't listen to.
My friends don't
90%
respond.
of
They
it.
don't. I'm not going to stop doing it. Right. So like, it's one of those things. Like, I always send books to people. I'm always, when I find something great, I try to share it with the people that I think would connect to that too.
Yeah.
But if you don't read or listen to the books, don't bother.
Right.
You know? But by the way, I'm just going to plug this book just because I really like it. It's called The Courage to Be Disliked. It's an amazing book. Everyone should read it. It's fucking awesome.
Okay.
It's also on Spotify for free, by the way.
Oh, is it really?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So anyways, but like, in my practice with my clients, I'm always doing like learning, serving, creating. You know what I mean? So if you're not serving, learning something new or creating something new, right, or trying to create stuff, that you don't kind of get yourself in the flow of life.
Right.
So that's another reason why I always pass on books to people, because it's a way to learn. But like, you can learn through documentaries.
Yeah.
I learned a lot about you watching your documentary.
There you go.
So before we started, you were like, man, I'm so glad that like I get to go on somebody else's podcast and not do my own. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, dude, this shit. Your whole setup, everything you got going, your energy, everything like that's very dope.
Well, dude, I appreciate you spending your time with me. I always ask people to give me a hug. You can push that mic out.
Absolutely.
Give me a hug. We're going to go heart to heart, right?
Heart, always.
Always heart to heart. Oh, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you.